Hey, hi everyone. So what I'm going to talk about today is promoting, wow, that's loud, promoting grit, tenacity, and perseverance in after-school programs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of a study we did for the Department of Ed, where we actually stepped back and looked at a wide variety of different kinds of programs and research about how to promote grit, tenacity, and perseverance, and we looked for patterns across them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the high-level patterns that we saw, some of the common threads through the programs, and then what I'm going to do is have three examples of programs that you're going to see through the eyes of participants in the program. So we'll look at it through the lens of this framework, and we'll also look at it through the eyes of the participants in the program. In fact, we even have a guest today that I'm going to interview who was in the program and is now a mentor in the program, Michael Owen. So we'll be very excited to hear from him. So this is what it is, right? This is what success really is in the background, right? This is why we really need to help kids learn how to deal with challenges, right? So there's all these bumps in the roads that kids are going to encounter, and it's not just in the classroom, but we've got kids that are going to be dealing with a lot of difficulties, the kinds of stresses that come with poverty. We're going to be dealing with kids across a range of socioeconomic conditions, kids that are going to be dealing with different kinds of stresses in their lives. Kids are going to have to deal with learning content that they don't find particularly interesting. They're going to have to navigate complex pathways in their careers. They're going to have to build their careers. Kids are going to have to deal with the turmoil of our volatile economic system and changing workforce needs. Kids need to really be able to draw on resources and know how to deal with challenge. And so what we're talking about here is grit. And people talk about grit in a lot of different ways, and people use a lot of different words to describe something similar. People might talk about tenacity, or perseverance, or agency. And just for the purpose of this talk, what I'm talking specifically about is grit. Perseverance to accomplish long-term or higher-order goals in the face of challenges and setbacks. And by higher-order goals, I mean goals that are really important to students, like getting into college or completing a major. So there's a lot of interest growing in the so-called non-cognitive factors, the factors that go beyond content in schools, and there's an interest at the national level, in formal schooling, even at the federal level. And there's particular interest in grit, because people are really coming to recognize at the highest policy levels and across settings and across the country that learning content is necessary, but it's not sufficient to prepare students for what they're going to face in the 21st century as they become adults. And so it's actually a very exciting time. There's a lot going on. There's lots and lots of programs that are underway, and people are finding a lot of success with kids, supporting tenacity and perseverance. There's a lot of research going on. There's a growing understanding of how to do this and what it actually is. And there's also an increased interest in putting resources, financial resources, into building programs and infrastructures. So we're at a very, very exciting time. And so, this is the context in which SRI is the research institute where I work. SRI did a grit study last year. And so our task, commissioned by the U.S. Department of Education, the Office of Educational Technology, was to try to understand the landscape of grit. What is it, the landscape of grit? What is it that we know about it? What is it that and we don't know about it very broadly throughout the field. What are people doing? And what are people doing? What are people not yet doing? And what are key recommendations for policy, practice, and research going forward as we move into this very exciting time? So the research methods that we used, we did a broad review of the research literature. And so we tried to just look at all the research that people have done, what's the state of the art there. And we interviewed 25 experts and thought leaders across different contexts, policy, practice, research. And we also reviewed more than 50 different programs that are fostering or promoting grit, tenacity, and perseverance in different ways. And that's what I'm going to focus on for most of the rest of this time. And this is not surprising in this audience, but one really important implication of our findings. Now, we were actually looking at these factors across all different settings of education. We were looking from pre-K through post-secondary, and we were looking at formal and informal, and so we were very broadly across education. And of course, one important finding is that it's going to take a lot to sort of transform the way that people think about learning, to incorporate these non-cognitive factors. And people that we interviewed, things that we saw in the writings, across the board, formal schooling has a lot of constraints with accountability and time and scope and sequence that make a lot of these transformations difficult, and it will take a lot longer. And so there's a really essential role for the informal learning space, which is not a surprise here. So now I'm going to move to talk about some of these programs and the way that we looked at them. So we looked at more than 50 programs, and the kinds of programs we looked at, there were basically 5 kinds. We looked at early elementary school and preschool programs that foster executive functions, because these are sort of the early building blocks, teaching kids how to pay attention, stay on task, stay focused. That's a really important part of persevering, is being able to just stay on task. And we focused on early childhood and early elementary school, but of course there's always ways to increase capacity on that, and I'll talk about that more later. We looked at formal schooling models. There's some schools that are using character education models where they're really trying to incorporate this throughout their curriculum. There's school reform organizations that help schools do that. We looked at informal programs that help support kids in getting into college or as a long-term goal. We looked at informal programs that are set up to spark kids' interest in STEM so that they become somebody who wants to persevere in STEM pathways. And we also looked at this new kind of intervention where there are these very short-term interventions that seem to have enormous impacts on how kids think about themselves and whether they persevere. For example, in just a few hours, these interventions might do something like transform the way kids think about themselves as an achiever and think about themselves as someone who's capable of taking on challenge. And this can happen. This can happen in a very small number of hours. And there's good research to show that these types of interventions 2, 3, 4 years later can be having impacts on whether students drop out of classes and the kinds of grades that they get. So there's a lot of very exciting things. So when we looked at the programs, looked at these programs across the board. Oh, we also looked at digital learning environments. There's a whole lot of new affordances of technology now to help kids solve problems that they have not been able to solve before. Kids run into all kinds of challenges, especially one example might be kids that are isolated. Isolated like in urban area, the kids that are not in urban areas and are more in rural areas, They now have access to resources online. They have access to online communities that they didn't have before. So when they hit challenges, there's a lot more possibility for ways of dealing with those challenges. There's a lot of different kinds of examples of that. And so when we looked at these different types of programs, we were looking at two pieces of them. We were looking at how are these learning environments designed? What are some key elements of them? And
let's give her a hand. She's putting up with a lot.
Is that one? Is it that? Yay! Okay. Thank you very much. So, further down. How about that? Does that help? Does that help? Oh, that's better. Is that better? Okay, good. Thank you. So we looked at what's common about how learning environments are designed, and then what's common about the types of internal resources that these programs target. What are the different psychological resources that they may want to draw out in kids or may want to develop in kids that they can use within that environment or take with them in the future? So I'm going to just talk about some of these high-level patterns that we saw. So how the learning environment is designed. Across the board in most of these types of programs, what we saw is two important things. We saw an opportunity to take on a long-term or higher order goal, and then a rigorous and supportive context for pursuing these goals or building psychological resources. Okay, so kids take on goals, and that's where they really have an opportunity to run into challenges, and they're going to have to demonstrate their grit. So to say a little bit more, also not just goals, but goals that are interesting and that are important to the student, that it sparks their interest, that it's consistent with their passions or their values, and also that it's optimally challenging. That it's not overwhelming, but it gives them enough challenge that they have to have some degree of struggle. And then in terms of the learning environment, the supportive context, it's typically there's attention to having a climate that's fair, respectful, conveys high expectations, and promotes belonging. There's praise for effort over ability. There's opportunities for practice, feedback, and reflection. Students are provided with the resources that they need to get the job done. They're not stopped by that. So they're not stopped by just not having the right tools or the right mentors. There's typically human resources, mentoring, peer communities, and time. Kids actually get time to really struggle with things so that they can practice what it means to deal with failure. And they get support in developing psychological resources. So then, what are these psychological resources that tend to go across these different interventions? So the internal resources, one set is academic mindsets. What do I tell myself in the face of challenges, failures, and setbacks? Do I have a growth mindset? Do I believe that my ability and confidence grow with my effort? Do I believe the challenge is inevitable for success? Do I believe that I belong in the community? These are mindsets that are really important. And when kids don't have these beliefs, they're very vulnerable to just kind of giving up. And when they have these beliefs, it energizes their moving forward. And then there's strategies and tactics. Do students know how to deal with challenge? Do they know how to make goals and plan? Do they know how to monitor their progress? Do they even know when they're in trouble? Can they anticipate challenges? And what are their strategies for changing course when they need to? So kids can learn these kinds of skills. And then there's effortful control. These are the skills that kids need to kind of stay focused, not get distracted. And that can be delayed gratification, but it can also be managing emotions and thoughts. When frustration comes up, when anxiety comes up, what do kids do with that? So there's a whole spectrum of skills that kids can develop from very early ages up into even through adolescence, when they need to manage so many different emotional issues. And so there's different interventions to help with that part of perseverance as well. And of course, we find that all of these interact with each other and they contribute to each other. So we have a bit of a model and a framework that we can use to look at interventions and sort of see the pieces of how people are promoting and fostering grit, tenacity, and perseverance. So an example might be project-based learning. So there's something where kids come up with a goal that's interesting for them, and they're supported in accomplishing this goal. And through that process, they might learn, I can do this. If I try hard, I can do this. They might learn how to plan and deal with problems that come up. And they might run into conflict with their teammates and learn the social skills to deal with that. Another example might be a program that supports kids in getting into college. So the higher order goal is there for them getting into college. And for a lot of kids, there are a tremendous number of challenges that come up around that. And so programs can provide a supportive environment to help kids have the skills to get through all of that and then develop what it is that they need to continue progress when they get through college, get into college. So now with that framework, I'm going to show you some examples of what this looks like in action, and particularly through students' eyes. And so the first one that I'm going to show you. So this is a recording of a high school student, Celia Bay, and I think that she really speaks for herself. This is Celia, and this is a recording from NPR.
When most people turn on their computer, they go straight for Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. They see pictures, words, and buttons, but I see the source code behind the screen. I first started learning the language of computers through an after-school program called the Technovation Challenge. 2 other girls and I worked to code and design a mobile app that lets users upload pictures of their wardrobe to help them coordinate outfits, like Cher's closet from Clueless, but better. From the color of people's shoes to the style of their hats, even accounting for rain or shine, our app would give users the most fashionable ensemble each day. In programmer speak, we optimize the outcome from existing variables. Working after school with 2 computer science majors from Cal, we learned a lot about programming, but we also learned about perseverance. Turns out some of our simplest ideas required pretty complex code and took days. At times, our idea didn't seem worth the energy it was taking to code. We became frustrated with each other, ourselves, and the whole concept of computer programming. But after just 3 weeks, the lines of jumbled letters and punctuations turned into coherent sentences I understood. And then the process of deciphering code became fun. Before we knew it, it was showtime. We put the final touches on our prototype and presented our app, Fashion Guru, to a board of judges at the Technovation Challenge. It felt like sending your child off to school for the first time. It was terrifying, but we won first place in the region. Learning the language of computers opened up a whole new world for me. Now, when I launch an app on my phone, I think, how can I make this better? And when I start up my computer, all I can think of are the unlimited possibilities. And all it takes is an idea, determination, and lots of caffeine. With a perspective, I'm Celia Bay.
So now we have a special guest. We have Michael Owen, who went through this program as a high school student and also is now a mentor. So welcome. Hi. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Oh, sorry.
So Michael, tell us about your current role at the YMCA Youth Institute.
Well, currently I am the YMCA Youth Institute Operations Director. during the summertime, I supervise 22 consultants who are consulting like our program. We're replicating our program throughout the United States. Not just only that, next year we're projecting the program internationally. Canada just signed on to replicate the YMCA Youth Institute in Toronto. So we have a few more sites internationally. We started locally with our community, and then it spread to Rapid City, South Dakota, and then Washington, Seattle, Washington.
Cool. So you started YI as a freshman, and how did you come to join the program?
Well, I come from a low-income background. I wanted a summer job because I was tired of trying to ask my parents for money. And like any kid, you want some kind of spending money, when you go hang out with friends. So I went to my career center in my high school. I saw his application on the table. It was saying, like, hey, you get paid $1,000 to come learn technology skills. And I was like, hey, why not? I thought the application. I told my my mentor at the time, who was my engineering instructor, and I was like, hey, check it out, man. He's gonna teach me how to make movies, music, and whatnot. He's gonna pay me $1,000. I just submitted in there, and I got a phone call one day saying, hey, come to the meeting. You've been selected. Yeah, the rest was history.
Nice, nice. And so what were some of the biggest impacts you feel like the program had for you in high school?
Well, some of the biggest impact was it really encouraged me to be myself. I was a nerdy kid. I was rolling with the nerd herd. And I always got picked on growing up. I remember I got a story behind it. Actually, when I was after graduating from the Youth Institute, we also had a year-round program. Bob, basically my mentor, and I came to his office one day. He was just kind of asking like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I tell him like, "Well, not so great." And I said, "Why not?" Well, I've been getting into fights and whatnot at school, and being picked on. And I said, why? I'm like, I don't know, because kids think I'm weird. I was pretty much like a black sheep at the time. And it's like, well, Jimmy, that's my other name. My middle name is Jimmy. Because Jimmy, you're always going to get picked on because, you don't fit into a social norm. You're not like the others, but I encourage you to just to be yourself, keep doing what you're doing. Because as you grow up, people are going to gravitate towards your energy. And that really helped me a lot, growing up as a youth and as an adult, because it was right, and I hold that to my heart right there. And it also had an impact on who I am today. I'm an outdoor advocate for inner city urban youth from low-income housing or low-income status. I run the outdoor education club at my community or program. So we do surfing, hiking, rock climbing, mountain biking, and a lot of other things. But without the Youth Institute, I know we were talking about the 5 pillars of the LEADs, right? What is it? Collaborative, active, meaningful. Help me out, people. Right, mastery and expand horizon. So a lot of that, I grew up in those pillars, but I was never able to articulate it until I attended this conference. And I was like, wow, I'm pretty much the product of the leaders, pillars. And I was, sitting back there with the camera, and I was having my revelation and going through all these experiences that I went through over the years. And what was I saying? The outdoors, right?
Yeah, so these are some of the impact. So tell us a little bit about, what was your major?
Yeah, I got it. I remember now.
Oh, okay.
All right, I got my train of thought again. Yeah, so the Youth Institute exposed me to all those things. Like I would have never, like growing up in a low income family, like my parents never exposed me to like outdoor activities. Yeah, because we just didn't have the means to do it. Parents were always working, and we were always home or hanging out in the neighborhood. But in the program, they got me to go camping. I got to go camping for the first time. I got to go snowboarding and got to go see snow and snowboarding for the first time. Rock climbing, and going to Catalina Island and snorkeling. So I did all these things, through the program, and it expanded my horizon, right? And then I took it upon myself because it was meaningful to me, and I knew how much I loved the outdoors. And I made it my mastery, right? Like a mastery. I became, specialized in those fields. And now I'm an instructor in all those fields for my kids.
So let me ask you this. You told me about your experiences in college that was after this and some of the challenges that you encountered. What were some of these challenges, and how did what you got out of this program help you with those challenges?
So college was really difficult. It took me 9 years to graduate with a BS degree in aerospace engineering. Thank you. I'm proud, but not too proud of it because it took a while. And I guess my standing story is I'm stupid, right? It took me 9 years because I'm stupid. I was too stupid to quit, right? Yeah, and I learned not to quit through the program. Persevere, grit, right? Exactly what she was talking about, what Nikki was talking about. There's that saying I like, when you go into hell, keep going. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But more specifically, some of the challenges was financial. Right? Every college student has their financial crisis when they're going to college, right? It's not hard. I mean, it's not hard, but it's really hard to work and go to school. So what the program provided me, because I was always coming back to the program, they provided me with a job. So during the school year, I would be working at the program part-time, mentoring youth. And then during the summertime, I worked full-time as past 2 years, I was a consultant, replicating our program in different agencies. And it don't have to be a YMCA agency, but just after-school or out-of-school learning agencies came together as one of our partners. Yes.
Great. So these were ways. Were there other ways that you got support? You were telling me about emotional support that you got.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. 9 years is a long time, and best believe that there were many times where I wanted to drop out of school and try to justify it. Well, all the successful people, dropped out of college, like Bill Gates. I think Einstein didn't go to college. So like maybe I just be one of those smart people. But no, I persevered through, and I thought about it this way. And the program really helped me out a lot too, and in many indirect ways and direct ways. They offered me emotional support, like, hey Jimmy, and financial support, like I got sponsored personally through my mentor to help pay for my tuition. But there is that thing, I didn't want to be a hypocrite to my kids. Here I am mentoring them, like, hey, think about post-secondary education. Yeah, you don't have to go to college, but maybe a trade school or something, but just pursue something at a higher education. I didn't want to be that person where I dropped out of college and then, and then I'm talking to their face like, hey, you need to go to school. You need to graduate from high school and go to college. So I wanted to really say, you know what? I went to college. It took me 9 years. You bet your ass it was tough. But you know what? I did it. And I had support. I'm very fortunate that I have both my YMCA family, YMCA Youth Institute family, and my immediate family to help me. But I want to tell them, hey,
professionals about how to foster grit, tenacity, and perseverance for their youth?
Well, I mean, like, I want to give you guys like a round of applause, because you're here today for the Leaders Conference, and that shows tremendous dedication to what you want to bring to your youth, quality of programming. And I want the same thing. I want my program to be like as inspiring and impactful as possible. So keep doing what you're doing. I mean, just being here, it's great. And I want to leave you with a quote. What was that quote? I'm a little nervous, all right? So I'm like, a lot of things are flying in my head. But yeah, a lot of my friends are having kids, and I'm like looked at the mentor for the kids, and the same thing has been popping up in everybody's baby showers and baby blessings. It takes a village. And then you guys have your own program, your own communities, and that's your village, and your staff members. So yeah, it takes a village to raise a child, and you know what? I'm the product of it. I think I turned out all right.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really nervous. I'm gonna get off stage now.